At InDigital, we know that public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Here in Greenville County, we have 8 different places where a 911 call can be answered.
It is the largest county in South Carolina. It's a challenge.
The type of information that a telecommunicator gets from Radius Plus is location-based technology. You can see where the caller is, if they have a medical issue, if they speak a different language. They're immediately able to text to that caller in their native language. It reduces response times because it immediately gets first responders where they need to be.
Carbine, it's multimedia. You can get text, translate to whatever language, getting away with the legacy equipment and going into a cloud-based solution.
It's the first time in U.S. history that we have an EZNet through cloud-native call handling.
As a police officer, to have the victim go video, that's unheard of.
You're getting upgrades every month, not every year.
To schedule your free Carbine demo, please visit carbine.com/WTT.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This is episode 445. Snaps. I had to look at the number because it's pretty high. and we've got episodes that are coming up, and we've got National Nina coming up next week. So there'll be even more episodes and content coming to you. Not just episodes from the attendees that are there, but also from a lot of the sponsors and everything that I have here. So with that said, this episode is sponsored by InDigital Rapid Deploy as well as Carbine. And a shout out to patrons as always. Thank you so much for everything. And it's just been having an excellent time and some amazing stories that have been coming out. And we've got Imagine Listening that's going to be coming up as well, which is also a 2-part episode that I do at different conferences. And Nina asked me, I hadn't had a chance to put in a session. I missed the deadline, but they ended up emailing and asking if I would be interested in doing Imagine Listening there. And I was all about it. So next week, Wednesday at 11:15 a.m. to 12:15 p.m., we'll be doing Imagine Listening. So please make sure to head to that session. You can also see me at booth 123 on Monday and Tuesday of next week, which will be the 12th, I think, and the 13th, or maybe the 13th and 14th, something like that. That's what it is. It's 13th and 14th. Check me out over there, booth 123. I'll be recording episodes, doing live broadcasts, walking through the vendor hall, and doing a bunch of other things. So make sure to check that out. It's going to be an excellent time. We've got new content that's coming up, bonus content, audio versions of the DRT, as well as open mic for patrons only, and Singing Badly in My Car, and just so much stuff that's going on. I am just super excited, and thank you all again for the support. If you missed open mic last week, make sure to check it out, because some of the stories that I shared on there, oh my Lord, Those stories were hilarious. So make sure to check that out. And you can see that on YouTube as well as Twitter and Facebook. So make sure to check that out. Now, I am excited for my guest today, and her name is Tina, and she is the director with Aurora 911 out of Colorado. Yo, yo.
What is happening? Come on. Oh, fangirl moment here. So, I've been in the industry a while, but I feel like now that I'm sitting here talking to you, suddenly I feel like I've arrived.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. That is excellent. Well, I am
Sure.
so happy to have you here. This is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, I think we talked a lot on social media. We also saw each other at APCO last year. And are you going to be at Nina this year?
I will. I'm
Next
planning to
week?
be at Nina, and I'll
Awesome.
be at APCO.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm excited. This post-pandemic, let's get out and see people face to face. I have a lot of hugs built up inside of me.
Right.
It's been rough for huggers everywhere. So I'm super excited to network. And, I just want to say, you and I have talked about this, but what this platform and what you're doing for our industry in giving the members of our industry a voice is just priceless. And I appreciate you. I really appreciate your taste in music, Ricardo. Every time you post a music link, something you're listening to, I'm like, yes. And deep down inside of me, I'm really hoping that maybe I could sing with you in the car one day.
Oh, hell yes. I've actually kind of been thinking about doing something like that where I'm at different conferences, bring my cameras, and then maybe just in the parking lot or something, going in circles, doing the singing badly in my car.
Please, I'm down for this. I am here for it. You just tell me when, I'll be there.
Oh, that would be a lot of fun. Okay, we got to figure this out. That would be really, really good. Again, I'm excited to have you on here to learn more about you and everything. And also, to start out, so right off the bat, like right before I hit to record, you showed this pretty amazing cup. Can you show that? Yes, look at that. For everyone who is seeing this and listening. So this cup it looks enormous on screen. It's all black and in white lettering it says Chaos Coordinator, which is perfect for being a 911. How many cups of coffee would you say, like regular cups of coffee, a regular size cup of coffee, do you think you can fit in that cup?
4.
No shit.
I know because I've tested the limit. So let me tell you a story because this is really good news. So we and my friend Andrew over at Aurora 911 or Aurora. I'm at Aurora. Where am I? Oh. Andrew's at Denver. He's at Denver 911. He's the director. He is one of my most favorite people. And along with him, we've been wringing our hands and brainstorming over, retention and hiring and recruiting and what can we do to improve work culture? What can we do to improve work experience for people like us who work shift work, who are under a lot of stress, who just want to be seen and heard and understood? And so he turned me on to something that he tried for his team, which was to install this super bougie, on-demand, whole bean, fresh ground coffee machine.
What?
I said, I'm about this. Send me the information. So he sent me the information. We engaged them and they installed it last week. They gave us enough goods, coffee beans, vanilla, milk powder, etc., chocolate, supposedly to last for like 2 weeks. So we are just under 1 week in and we were out of everything. We just demolished our supply. So we had to expedite them back to fill it in. But I'm telling you, we have and I don't know if it's the caffeine or what it is, right? But big smiles. People are just drinking the living daylights out of coffee. And I'll tell you what, our call answer times are like just nothing. I really think it's the caffeine, but no, really. Happy to drink coffee. I love coffee. I think it's a staple of 911 life, and it's such a small. So for directors, if you're really thinking about something as just an easy ad, honestly, I think this is going to cost us maybe $200 or $300 a month to maintain this machine. De minimis cost, but great value. And we're continuing to do a number of other things, but this was one thing that we threw at the wall and it stuck. And I'm a better person when I'm so,
That's amazing.
Add it to your list of things to try.
Oh wow! And having a bougie machine like that, I bet you the coffee tastes even better. Like
I'm
it's
having
amazing.
a vanilla cappuccino right now, and it's super bougie, and it's really like you get a pay increase. Starbucks is going to be really upset with us because I think it's comparable. Absolutely.
Oh man!
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. For those who are watching and listening, if you want to, do better on your your call answering times and morale and everything, hook yourself up with one of those bougie coffee machines. Oh, that is amazing.
We're
Well
definitely
done.
doing everything faster now. Everything faster.
Oh man, that is very, very cool. You're gonna have to take a picture and send it.
I will.
after the episode and stuff, so I can see this. This is great.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Well, I'm excited to have you on here and to learn more about you and everything. And so you've been in public safety for about 23 years now, right?
Yes, November 21st, 1999.
Man,
The day that will live in infamy for me.
I started September of 2001. It was like
That's an
2
interesting
weeks.
time to start.
Yeah, it was a couple of weeks after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
Is when I started, and it was definitely interesting. But yeah, I was, man, it's so long ago. It feels like
Uh-huh.
that's
We had what we called a CAD system, and it was like a DOS based recording mechanism. It actually was pretty ingenious. My
wow.
former director, when I was with the State Patrol, kind of helped to develop this and implement it in our center. And yeah, you had to kind of like Control T to start the timestamp for an event, and then it was just crazy. And then at the end of the day, at midnight, we pushed print, and the whole day's activity would print out onto a dot, through a dot matrix printer.
Oh my
And then we
Lord.
pulled off all the sides of the paper and filed the day's events.
I can
A lot has changed since then.
I can hear that right now. All I can hear in my head is the ring, 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 and then the.
Yes. It was just, for me, the most satisfying part really was tearing off the edges.
Oh, of course,
I
yes.
loved it. It was catharsis.
But you know that it would
instantly went on graveyard shift. So, I mean, that was just the best. Oh man, the best times of my life.
But
on the
you know though that it would piss you off if it didn't come off just right. At least it would to me. Like I would fold it and go to rip,
Yeah.
and then if it ripped half, I'd be like, "Oh, stupid paper," and then go to do it again.
Because none of us are OCD.
Of course, yes. Not at all.
None of us are. And
yeah.
Really, no type A personalities, no perfectionism. No.
It's a thing, right? It is definitely a thing. So let's hop back in our DeLorean. Let's go back in time to the beginning of these 23 years. How did you get involved in public safety to begin with?
Completely by accident. Sometimes I think about this and I think, this had to have been divine intervention. So I applied for the job without even realizing I had applied for it. I had gone down to a job service center. At the time I was working for FedEx. That was a fun job, customer service. And I was interested in getting on with government, with state. My parents were state employees and really encouraged me, right? So not only do you have that stability, but the ability to secure your future with a retirement and the benefits that come with, just medical and dental coverage, which, in my professional life up until then, and I was in my late 20s, it just wasn't a part of my my priorities, but it really was, started to become that way. So I realized it was time for me to adult, fully adult.
Yes.
And I went to the job service office and I applied for just a general state application. And it was like, just check the places you would like to work, check the departments you'd like to work for. And so I was right. I'm like, okay, checked everything. And then they invited me to come in and do one of those administrative skills testing, right? So it was again, you had to fill out the little ovals on the answer sheet and the booklet and the reading comprehension and grammar and English and, summarizing stories and all of that. So completed the test and went on with my life, went back to work at FedEx. A couple weeks later, I had a voicemail on, my voicemail machine. It was a little cassette in there, and you had to press play. You kids aren't going to know what I'm talking about, but got home from work, and there was a voicemail from me. And Don with the Colorado State Patrol wanted to speak with me, and would I give him a call back? Well, you can only imagine the 10 times, the 10 types of anxiety and panic that I experienced in listening to this voicemail. I thought, where was I driving? What was I doing? Oh man, am I in trouble? So I called very cautiously and I thought, well, I need to because they're the Colorado State Patrol and they know where I live. So I called and he's like, yeah, you filled out a job application. You applied for a job. Oh, I did. And he's like, we'd like you to come in and do some more testing. So phew. And also, what did I do? And so I went to my appointment. And for those of you real OGs in the crowd, you're going to appreciate this, but I was scheduled for a perfects skills test. Some of you are going to say, oh, amen, I know what you're talking about. And some of you are going to shrug. So the perfects was like this, an actual, it was mimicking like a dispatch console. It looked like it was a big gray box and it had a microphone that kind of, came out from the front of it. And there was rings on pegs and we had to read from index cards and there was a telephone. It was really highfalutin in 1999, but I took the test and passed it and then went through an interview and they offered me a job. And I had no idea what I was getting into. I mean, my only point of reference really at this moment was Rescue 911. Like William Shatner and his narrative of these stories. And I thought, I'm going to birth some babies. Ooh, it's going to be so exciting. I'm going to murder mysteries. I'm all about it. And the rest is history. I went through the background. Wow, that's the most humble and vulnerable experience that anyone could ever go through. And I thought after that, wow, these people know me better than my parents. But after that, I thought, after going through this, I'm all in. So it was Thanksgiving Day in 1999 was my very first shift. I reported and I couldn't figure out how to get in the building. It was secure and very nondescript and in a really bad part of town in Pueblo. And, anyway, so my CTO came out and found me on the street looking confused, evidently, and brought me in. And honestly, the rest was history. About 2 weeks into training, the only thing I could think to myself was, where have you been all my life? How did it take me this long to find you? And I knew immediately. It was the first time in my life that every day was a new, unexpected challenge. Up until then, every job I'd ever had, I would, hire on, I'd go through the basic training, kind of master here's how you make the widgets, or here's how you do the job. And then about 6 months to a year in, I got bored, stagnant. I was antsy. I was ready to move on. To the point where when I was going through my background, I thought they're never going to hire me because I swear I've had a job every 6 months for the last 5 years. But it was really that lack of challenge. And here I am, right? I always say, like, we don't go looking for this profession. It seems to find us. Find us like we are needles in the haystack. And it found me, and never saw it coming.
Wow.
But man, like it was my destiny. 911, when I look back, like I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I couldn't imagine like serving in any other capacity. What we're able to do and the way that we impact lives, there's nothing like this. Even through the stress, even through all of the challenges we face, at the end of the day, we're the hub. We're the first point of contact, and I absolutely love it. So, training was also a very humbling, insightful experience for me, someone who had just gone through job after job where I was like learning it, mastering it, and getting bored. This was the first time in my life where I simply was never done learning. I was never, ever done. I'm still not done. But, and that was, at first, I'll be honest, it was really hard for me because I just wanted to hurry up and master it and like show me what to do and then get out of my way and let me do it.
Right. Yeah. Again, no type A personality, right?
It was never the case. And there was, I had an opportunity to learn through mistakes every day. And I think that was exactly what I needed in my life, in that moment of my life, to ground me and to set that stage to become a lifelong learner. Frankly, I was pretty cocky up until that point because I didn't feel that challenge. And this was the first time in my life where it was hard.
Oh man, you got humbled hard then.
Hardcore, man. Well, when you think about the training experience too, and some of this was good for me, and then some of this actually has molded how I feel about facilitating professional development for other people. So when I was training, it was kind of the old school, like suck it up, buttercup, and a little bit of hazing involved, maybe. Like it's just a different place back then.
Right.
When it came into a center, centers didn't have a ton of turnover, especially the one that I had come into. So it was myself and one other new person in a sea of old, like salty old dispatchers. So that was fun. But, I remember the training forms and, it followed the APCO. It followed APCO P33. There was 7. You could score 1 through 7, and 1 was NRT. But right off the bat, I was told, like, you will work toward a 4. And you will never score more than a 4. Because if you score more than a 4, then that means you're as good as me, and you're just not.
Well, right. Damn.
So, yeah, it was pretty cutthroat. So, every day, and I would get those like a 2 and then a 3. And I'd work toward the 4. And even on days I'd rock it, I'd think, well, did I get a 4 today? And so for me, it kind of also set the stage, though, in my mind that, that goals should be achievable. So it was a good lesson in that, but so humbling to work to that middle of the road and get that 4 rating finally. It turned into such a big deal. And I had, our training program was supposed to be 10 to 20 weeks. I was released at 10, not because I was great. But because my CTO, who is a longtime friend of mine, decided he was going to fall in love, and then he needed to go and get married. So he was like, "You need to hurry up and get proficient because I have plans."
Yeah.
So, hurry up. So that's what I did, and it was I look back at that time as really one of the most pivotal moments of my entire life.
Wow.
What an amazing entry into this profession.
For sure. Like, so, when I started, like I said, I started in 2001, and that first night that I was in dispatch, um well, so my background that they did at small police department, Central Florida, background took a couple months, and I hadn't heard a word from them. So I thought, well, I guess I didn't get the job. And then the chief shows up out of nowhere, asks me if I want the job. I thought I was starting like the next week, and he's like, "No, you start tonight." And so I kind of freaked out, and I said, "For real?" And he goes, "You want the job, right?" And I said, "No, no, no, I do. I just, it's not what I was expecting." And so I worked 10P to 6A, and I went in, and my trainer, kind of like how you explained yours a little bit, but I always say my trainer was very seasoned, very seasoned. And
That's a better way of putting it.
yeah, he was pretty cool, but I mean, he was also like straight to the point.
Mhm.
And he showed me everything because again, this is a small police department, so you walk in and it's just like the little lobby, and then just right across, above and over, is dispatch, is me right there with a few computer screens and stuff, and our 911 system. And I watched him take a 911 call, and then after he hung up the phone, he pointed at me and he goes, "You're next." And I thought, hell no, like, for real, right? Like, this is it? There's no other training. And, he was just telling me it takes for you to be human, for one, and common sense, and you will have to grow some thick skin because there are going to be some things that you're going to need that for. But that was really it, man. Like, but I will say this. So I didn't know a lot about like NASCAR and stuff until I started working with him. He would walk in to the dispatch center to relieve me. The door would rip open and he would yell out, "Boogity, boogity, boogity, boogity." I thought he was like convulsing or something. Like, I didn't know what he was doing. Like, every single time he would come in and do that, and I would think, Does he have like a tick or something? Like, what is it that he's doing?" And just one day, out of nowhere, I had the TV on, and I hear it, and I turned around really fast to see what it was, and it was a NASCAR commercial on Fox Sports.
Oh man.
And I thought, oh, I should have put two and two together, because he was always walking in with like a NASCAR shirt or a NASCAR hat, but I never put two and two together. And
Oh my
it was nuts. But he was one of the coolest dudes.
Yep.
And yeah, a few weeks later, they sent me to like a 40-hour beginners course for dispatch and stuff. And I learned a lot of good stuff there, a lot of good tips and everything. But it was definitely was different. Like you said, it was a different time. And the training, it was just like bam, bam, bam. Like, you get in there, you learn, and you observe, and you basically jump right in, because I mean, there's no other way you're going to learn other than jumping in. Now there's way more, people get to do sit-alongs, people get to just observe and do other things, maybe even go to a training or something like that.
Mhm.
And then they or there's an academy. There's a lot of different things that happen now, but back then it was like you're in, and
Mhm.
it's time to learn.
We had no classroom portion. I mean, it was day one was OJT. By the end of day one, I was talking over the radio, right? It
Oh
was maybe
man.
it was just acknowledging traffic, like my very
Yes.
first 10-4,
Yeah.
you know, um, but right away it was hands-on. And I think the thing that really stands out to me is, we have come a long way, but
Yeah.
when I was training, there wasn't a, "Hey Tina, how do you learn? I'm gonna adjust my training style to your learning style." It was, "This is how I teach. So you better figure out how to follow along, because this train's leaving the station, get on board.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
to some degree, when I think about that, I think that's exactly what I needed in the moment, right? And I get now that I have all of these years under my belt, I understand the complexity of adult learning. But, really in that moment when you're that wide-eyed, scared to death person, and then just really trying to overcome also learning how to see law enforcement, right? Because I worked for, I started my career with the State Patrol, and our center covered 17 counties in southeastern Colorado. And so we worked very closely with state troopers. And so one of my first interactions with them, I was so nervous to learn how to see them as my colleagues and partners and not in this like authority figure over me type of thing. And I think we all go through that to some extent. And I just remember how mindful I was that I felt weird about it at first. And it wasn't like I had let me set the stage. It wasn't like I spent time in the back of patrol cars because I know a few of you are like, why do you feel nervous?
Right.
But that was also a really big adjustment. But yeah, I mean, learning how everything works. I mean, it's nothing like William Shatner. He's a fibber. Like, it was nothing like that, right? Like, and I would think to myself after a day of calls where, maybe aggressive driver complaints or property damage crashes, right? We were all traffic safety. And I thought, we didn't do CPR on one person today. Like, no babies were born today.
Right. Yeah.
It took me forever to figure out that it's hours of boredom interrupted by moments of sheer terror.
Right.
Yeah. The moments of sheer terror are the hook that bring you back. At least for me, it was.
Yeah, it's just like Blues Travelers. The hook brings you back.
It does.
Yes. Yeah. And oh man, yeah, because in that show, if you remember, they're almost actually, I think every episode had a good outcome. And the dispatcher met and all the first responders, they all met the whoever was the one who was calling for help. Most of the time, if I remember correctly, it was dispatch, as the first responders and everything who met them. But it always ended like that, right? And then you get into it and it's like,
you're like, I experienced zero closure.
Yes.
I just need to get comfortable with unfinished stories like that.
Right. Yes.
It's never like that.
Exactly.
Well, we're trying to change that now.
We are. Yes. Yeah. There is a lot that has been changing and everything. But do you remember when you first walked in? So there's a couple things I want to ask here, but this first one is, when you first walked in, do you remember walking in and looking at everything? And was there ever a moment where you're like, oh shit, like, did you feel overwhelmed or anything when you walked in?
Are you kidding me? That was the first thing I thought. We walked into the door and the first thing I noticed was that it was pitch black. No lights.
That's right. Yes.
And then I just saw so many monitors everywhere, just monitors. And then there were TVs at each end of the room. And I just thought to myself, like, oh, wow, like, here I am. I'd never seen it. I had never laid eyes on the communication center prior to starting work. I had no idea. And sat down, put on the headset, plugged in, and just started going through, going over things and diving in.
Did you have the umbilical cord?
Yes. Oh, yeah. And then you have to learn about that the hard way, right? So at first, like, oh, let me run and get that.
Yes. Yes.
I ripped that thing off my head so many times in a hurry, like, pretty
ridiculous. Or you gasp when you're hearing like your trainer do a call and you're like, and the caller just happens to hear you because you didn't have the switch on mute for you. Yeah. And they're like, what was that? And you're like, oh my God.
Nothing.
Yes. Yes. Oh man, I definitely remember those times. It gives me anxiety thinking about it.
Oh my gosh. The first calls are so hard. the first real emergencies where you're having to dive in to really, like your knowledge of protocol and, just those moments where you just think, if I don't get this right, it's going to be really, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that pressure we put on ourselves constantly, it just, um, yeah, it's horrifying and yet addictive.
Right. Yes. No. Agreed. Agreed. Yes. It definitely is. There's a level of oh man. I guess we can say adrenaline also that ends up hitting where you get to that mode and you're just going and going and going and going. It's almost like if you remember that scene in the movie Old School when Will Ferrell he's doing a debate or something and he ends up spitting out this amazing retort and everyone is like, how did you do that? But he's like, what happened? I blacked out. Like but you are
Yes.
that into
Mhm.
a call and
Yes.
helping and going through and it's so high priority that when you're done you end up thinking, how did I do that? Like, wow.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
not
Absolutely.
everyone can do this job. So you can tell someone who's never done this job before and they'll just stare at you and then
Yeah.
ask, how do you do that? And you're like, it's what I do.
How do you
There's no other.
simultaneously want to bench press your vehicle and collapse of exhaustion at the same time?
That's a good way to put it. Yes.
Right? Like you're just like,
Yes.
I'm wiped and but let's go. I'm ready.
Right. Yeah. Especially after a major call and then the
Yeah.
next one comes in, you're like, "Whew, all right, we got the
Right.
next one. You got to go
Mhm.
right into it. Cause a lot of times there is no time to,
No.
step back or reflect and take that deep breath. If you, anybody here watching and listening though, if you have that moment, please take a moment to reflect or take a breath or whatever, and then jump into the next one. Cause I promise you it'll help. But if you don't, whenever you get a chance, please make sure to do so. Cause this is an
Amen.
interesting job.
Amen. We have to take
um,
care of ourselves.
Yes, for sure. Now, this is the second part. So you had mentioned that when you got in there and you started doing all of this, that you were like, this is where I'm meant to be.
Mhm.
Now, and I asked this to a lot of people, but well, everyone really. What was it? Do you remember, what it was? Like, was it just the environment? Was it the calls, things you were listening to, or just was it simply a feeling while you were there and you thought, this is where I'm meant to be. Like this was for me.
Honestly, it was the first time in my life, other than being a mother, where I felt like I was a part of something that was bigger than me, something bigger than myself, right? When you feel that higher calling and that sense of purpose,
Yeah.
and you understand not only not only are you helping people, in their worst moments, but you're also that like you're that co-pilot to every field responder who's out there. You're working scenes with them. You're working calls right alongside them. And knowing that I had that ability to influence outcomes, it for me, there just no greater calling. I just felt like yes, like it was just like a moth to a flame. I knew that that's exactly what I wanted to do for the rest of my professional career. And here
Oh.
I am, still doing it. Like I don't know what that says about me, but
That's amazing though. I mean, this 23 years. I'm just behind you with 21. And but my actual dispatching career lasted 13 and a half years. And then from there, I went to the private side and worked for about 7.5. And then I went on my own. And I man, years ago, if someone would have told me that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I would have said, you're joking with me. It not just that, but if someone would have said that I would have gone into public safety to be a 911 dispatcher and call taker, again, I would have said, nah,
yeah.
that's probably not going to happen. But as soon as I got in there, it was the same thing. Like I fell in love with it.
Mhm.
All of it, the stress, the craziness,
Right.
the good that comes out of it as well, the people that I worked with and stuff. But I kind of had the same issue a little bit when I first got started, was trying to talk to folks, because I was nervous as hell as well, talking with all the officers that I had. Because, of course, starting out, small police department, there's like 12 sworn officers, maybe 13. And that's including the chief, lieutenant, and sergeant. Like, it was a small police department, small city. But then moving back to Southwest Michigan, working for the county that I grew up in, for that central dispatch, you've got the sheriff's department, you've got the state police, 2 different posts on either side of the county, and then you've got all the city police departments, and you're trying to relate with everyone, and also have them learn more about you as you're talking on the radio and stuff. I think what helped for me a bit was hanging out with them and getting a more comfortable. What was funny, I will say, what was funny is that my brother came to hang out with me and a bunch of officers one time, and we were just having pizza and beer at one of the houses, and we're playing pool. And my brother is nursing one, and I said, "What's wrong, man?" And he goes, "I don't know, dude. I just feel weird. I've never like drank with like law enforcement officers before." And and one of my buddies heard him, and he walks over and he goes, "It's all right, dude." He goes, "We're just like you." We're just people.
Cops are people too.
Yeah, it was the most hilarious thing. And then he felt better. But for me, I was getting used to them and stuff on the radio, and having them call up and everything. But I think it really helped to hang out with them. And when they would come up sometimes, and we would just be talking and everything, just shooting the shit in between calls, and that really helped. But also helped me on the radio, because when I was training, I don't know how it was for you, but when I got on the radio, I I wanted to do the job so well that on certain responses, even if it was just like a 10-4 response, I would look at my trainer and say, "This is just like a 10-4, right?" And she would
Just
go,
confirm with me that I'm on the
"Yes.
right track here.
Yes, yeah, yeah." And she would go, "Yeah, just say 10-4." And then 10-4. And she'd be like, "Good job." I'm like, "Yes." But that was my problem though, is because I wanted to do it so well. Like, I didn't want to mess up, one, and two, I knew that the entire county is listening to me, not just people in the center, but everyone in the county. And if
And
I
everyone
mess
with
it
a
up,
scanner.
right, and if I mess it
Yeah.
up, someone is going to talk shit, and I was like, I don't
Yes.
want people talking crap about me or laughing. But
Mhm.
then I I had to get past it, and talking to those out in the in the field and everything, they had some good tips and good advice. So then after that, if I would mess up, only on a non-emergency complaint, of course, if I was on the radio and I would mess up, I would stay with the radio open, and I'd probably chuckle a couple times at myself to take the power away from anybody else, and then go, "Let's start that again." And then I would redo it, and then they'd be like, 10-4 Central. Thank
Oh,
you.
I was just as you were telling that story, Ricardo, I was thinking back to, what, I don't know if you did this when you were in training, but when I was in training, I had an opportunity to do a ride along. So we had 17 counties, 4
Mhm.
different troop areas, and I had the opportunity to ride in every area, which was really cool. But I remember my very first ride along was with get in the car with the trooper, Dave. And the first thing he does, like, mind you, I'm maybe in my first or second week of training completely.
Mhm.
And we get in the car, I buckle in, he's like, "Okay, I just need to show you a couple things in case you need them." So he shows me the release button for the shotgun.
What?
I don't know, in case we get in a shootout, I guess.
Right.
But just the pucker factor, I was like, what are we doing on this ride along? What's happening today?
Yes.
It really was uneventful, but the fact that he took the time to show me the escape hatches, and then, like, here's how you operate the radio on this side. Here's what you do. So if you need to, this is what you do. But first I want you to deploy this button and release the shotgun. You know how to shoot a shotgun, don't you? I was like, oh, well, I guess today's a good time to learn. I didn't realize
Yes.
that was a part of the job description, but okay, I'm going to roll with this. The second ride along I went on, I saw my first fatal scene, which I feel like helped me to develop a little bit of a callus and to start to compartmentalize a bit. But I was on scene. It was a 2-vehicle fatal, one fatal. The older female driver pulled her car out in front of a big F-250 with a horse trailer, and she lost her life. And I remember how worried everyone was. Like, I went from like, here's my shotgun to like, we need to get you out of here. You shouldn't be here. And I didn't want to leave because I realized when I was doing the job, this was what I was facilitating. This was exactly what I needed to learn. And I stayed on scene for quite a while. I learned a lot about the process, watched it from start to finish. And it was the first time in my life that I had seen death outside of a funeral. Right? It was the first time. And so that made a big impression on me, but, also very interesting. And how that, shapes, to me, it's not even that, like seeing the live scenes, like that didn't even bother me. And you realize over time how your mental imagery makes things exponentially worse than it is. Like, death is horrible, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But the pictures we paint in our head are so much worse than what we're actually looking at. And so if you can really understand the difference, it's helpful. And I think that's why I'm not afraid of visual imagery coming into the center, because I actually feel like if we do this the right way, it's going to be more empowering and maybe help with our resilience more than it will hinder, for that reason.
Yeah. No, I agree, because I wrote an article about 3 or so years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and it was just a prediction of mine as I wrote it. I wrote it like a almost a time capsule entry from a seasoned dispatcher in 2016 to dispatch in 2050 and or 2053, something like that. And basically what I had written in there was that we had lost the human factor of being 911 dispatchers and call takers, and what we were afraid of visually is actually what helped us, in the fact that being able to see certain things brought actual closure to us. It was just left to us to be able to figure out how to really take care of our mental health and wellness with what we were going to be seeing. And so I had put that out there, and I remember some people in the beginning were like, no, I don't think it'll help that way. And it's started to change. So I put that out there, and I thought, man, I might have been a little bit right.
It was a bit prophetic, wasn't it? Like you were calling it, but that's, it's true. I think we just can't be afraid. We have to be prepared, but not afraid.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's all in preparing for those things. And I agree. You being out there definitely handed another perspective to it. We did ride-alongs as well at the county dispatch that I was at, and it's funny that you mention about weapons and such, because I did one of my first ride-alongs with a state trooper. He was a K-9 officer as well, and we we get in there, and he does the same thing. He shows me how to release, the shotgun and stuff, and he's showing me all of these different weapons, and he goes, and if anything, the last resort is this old pistola. And I was like, are you for real? And he has, like, he was laughing at me at first, but when I asked him if he was for real, his whole face changed in demeanor. And he goes, Ricardo, if something happens to me out here, you are my closest backup. So
yes, that's exactly what I heard too.
And I said, oh, I got your back, man. So one of the traffic stops, he had me stand outside of the vehicle on one of the corners to keep watch of the other person that was there. And I thought he was joking at first, and he's like, no, you need to get out right now, because again, you're my backup. I was like, oh my, okay. So I'm standing there and I'm watching, and I'm just like waiting. But him looking at me, I probably looked cool and calm, but inside I was like, oh my Lord, like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the most interesting things, but it was a lot of fun. This whole profession is a lot of fun, even with the stress and all the craziness that comes with it. There's a lot of good that happens as well. I want to go back really quick, and I just want to ask, like, do you remember any of those earlier calls that you had, or maybe even your first call? Like my very first call that I was dreading because my trainer told me you're next. It ended up just being a like a butt dial. It was a missed dial call, but I was like sweating and I was just waiting. My heart was pounding, and then when the phone rang, I'm like, "Russ, proof 911. Where's your emergency?" And they're like, "Oh, it was just. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call." I'm like, "Oh, thank God."
So two come to mind,
Mhm.
just two. One because it was on the phone, and the other was over the radio. So
Mhm.
um, I'll do the phone one first. The story's a little shorter. So
Sure.
and it wasn't the initial 911 call. This was we were working a fatal in one of our cities, and in the course of this occurring, the fatality was a younger woman. Um, who was off to college. And somewhere along the line, the coroner was on scene and dialed her number or her roommate's number on her cell phone and connected with the roommate, who then immediately called her mother, who then immediately called for more information. And
Oh, wow.
I, I, I had not been. I was less than a year into the job. This one stands out to me. But she wanted me to tell her what was going on. And I had been given strict instruction not to do that, that there was a contingent on their way to the mother to make a proper notification. And she was just asking me point blank. And I couldn't, I had been forbidden from telling her. And so I was trying to comfort her, knowing in my heart I was like a total liar in that moment. And that one it bothered me for a long time because she just really needed to know what was going on. Like, I get it. That one was really hard. And then the other was a pursuit. My very first pursuit. I was maybe a month out of training, and back in the day, we were the state patrol, so we chased everything all the way to the point of the crash. Man, it was fun. It was good. So I had a drunk driver report and aired it. Aired the plate, aired the description. And so two of my favorite troopers are out there working together, and they locate the vehicle, pull them over, and take them out onto roadsides. And I'm thinking, yeah, I'm like high-fiving, like, woo, we got this person. I was a part of that. I aired it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden everything changed because suddenly one of my troopers with his voice octave, maybe 5 or 6 octaves higher, says, "We're in pursuit." And I just remember thinking, oh shit, what do I do? And so what would anyone do? I
Mhm.
just yelled out to the room, "Help!" And one of the older dispatchers in the room came over, and she just put her hand. I'll never forget this. I was panicking. I thought I was going to throw up right there. And she put her hand on my shoulder and she was like, "Tina, pay attention to your troopers. Document, pay attention. We're making all the notifications. Just focus on them. You're fine." And in that moment, I just came down and then focused in on what was happening. And we chased this individual all the way into the next county, another troop area, finally used stop sticks and got him into custody. But in that moment, I'll tell you what really stood out to me and what was so impressionable was the fact that in that moment, I asked for help and I got it. I was a part of a team. Nobody was going to let me drown. No one was going to, no one was going to let that event go sideways. And I knew right in that moment that I was I could totally trust my team to have my back. And then it really just made me want to double down on being that person for the people I worked with. And so it was just a very impressionable moment in my career.
That's amazing. Those are those best moments when you need some sort of help, and you can just yell out for it and someone be there, because there are probably other places where you can yell out for help and others are like, we're either too busy or they're letting you go through it. And you're like, no, 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 no. I really need you to come over here to help me out with this because I've got something, that's going on. And it kind of reminds me of, we had someone who, this was on a Memorial Day, and man, this one was a pretty crazy one because, we all jumped in to help our coworker, but this person had been they went through training, and I think it might have been either their first or second day off of training. And the weekend going up to Memorial Day, there was a guy that people were calling on in this area, and they kept saying he's walking around with a shotgun and he's just being disorderly, but he's on his property and he's not doing anything to anybody else. So what are you going to do? Like, what, they can't do any, like, he's not doing anything that's threatening anyone. He's just walking back and forth with his gun and stuff. They did check him out fully and everything, there's no arrest or anything. He wasn't doing anything illegal. The bad thing though was that on Memorial Day, that guy ended up like snapping, and he ended up shooting his neighbor's wife in the leg. And our partner is taking this call, but she kind of froze. So she's trying to talk to the people, and we all end up jumping in to help our coworker and put in the complaint. We're listening, we're typing everything in so that she can just talk to this person. The bad thing though was that at the end of that call, when it was finally done, because they were working a one-to-one shift, so it was a split shift. My team was already going to be leaving at the end of that day, around 5, and so that person stayed when we left. When I came back the next day, they told me that that was it. Like, after she was done with that shift, she left.
Wow.
Put in her notice, but just in comparison, we jumped in to help out, and it sucks that she ended up leaving, but just the same as we were there to help people out, and it is always a good feeling to be able to come together and have that. So I can see where that would be, a memory that sticks with you because those people were there. And look, you're there 23 years later.
Yeah. And honestly, when times get tough, I mean, this is going to sound cheesy, but I really think about, so her name is Charlie, and I in moments where I am very stressed, there are times when I visualize and I remember the feel of Charlie's hand on my shoulder. Like, it made such an impression on me that I still refer to it even now. It spoke volumes. Like, she didn't have to say much, but the hand on my shoulder said it all.
That's awesome. See, and that's also, something that can be shared to, to others as they're coming in, to be able to give that example of camaraderie and stuff that's, that's built up there in the center as the team. One of the things I didn't ask, and I want to ask really quick, is for where you work, how many people are working on the floor at the time, and is it 12 or 8-hour shifts?
So currently,
Mm-hmm.
so we have anywhere from 13 to 15 on the floor at a time, and we're working. So, right, we're going through exactly what everyone else is going through right now. So because of staffing, we have a 410 model, but it really is more like it's 412s. We built, we're trying to find ways to reduce the amount of overtime. But we found that people really prefer to have, if we have to have overtime, if we can attach it to a regular scheduled day, it's easier than days off. And we're not out of the woods with the day off overtime, but we're working toward it. And as a leader, right, you get into that place where, for me, I'm dealing with a team who's, we've been through a pandemic. We went through a summer of significant civil unrest in our community. And frankly, they're fatigued. I think we all are. But I recognize, right, we have to do what we can to take care of the people who are here. And sometimes that means we reduce our level of service in order to protect the people. I've had to make those hard decisions a few times. And right, it's a balancing act, right? There's an expectation of the community that when they call, the call's answered immediately and they receive service immediately. And I also recognize that if I don't mindfully remember and consider the impact that that expectation has on every member of our team, and use that as a part of decision making, I also know that I run the risk of pushing them over the edge. And at the end of the day, the people, each person has to come, they have to come first. They have to. So it's, it's a very, it's like I'm back in basic training, right? Like I'm striving for that 4. Like I just, you have it presented in front of you, and some of these challenges are old as time and some are brand new. And, what do we do to navigate this and have people come out of the other end okay and feeling the way I feel. I you know what I mean? Like I want the people around me to love the profession as much as I love it. So I want to be careful not to break them in the process. So it's a challenging time, Ricardo.
It is. It's definitely challenging. There's so much. There's so many variables that that are involved in 911 or this industry as a whole. I want to ask another question here, about your story, and only if you feel comfortable sharing it. But what about a call that has stuck with you?
That one's easy because I'll tell you, it occurred early in my career, and it was in a time of my career where debriefing, critical incident stress management, all of that was very, very much unheard of especially for public safety communications. So September 28th, 2001, you were in basic training.
Yeah, I was. Yes.
I was like, how funny you said when you started. And I was like, well, that was an interesting month for both of us.
Yeah.
I was a CTO and I had a trainee with me, and I was on the graveyard shift. We were 2 weeks out from 9/11. So we were we just rode that wave of emotion and terror and all the things, right? The world changed in that moment, and we were in the middle of that, dealing with that. And I remember that night so clearly because Walmart had come to the comm center and had brought us like I don't know, 3 or 4 of these 6-foot long sub sandwiches, like all this food, like it was like first responders, like they just lavished us with food. I'm sure I gained 20 pounds in that month, but we had so much food, and so a couple of my troopers were out there working the road, and I said, hey, you should come into the center. We have so much food. Come and get a sandwich. Come visit. And so they drove in, and I introduced them to my trainee, and we were just shooting the breeze. And they maybe were 3 or 4 bites into their sandwiches. And we got a call from Fremont County saying that one of their deputies had just been shot on the side of the highway that my 2 troopers had just traveled down to come to the center. So they just missed this by a few minutes. There's more to that story. And so I just remember I remember watching them, they dropped their sandwiches and ran out the door. And in that moment, it turned into 24 hours of hell. I wasn't there for all 24 hours, but I was there for the overnight shift. So this started about 10 p.m. And 2 brothers, they had been taken into custody by Deputy Jason Schwartz. There was a noise complaint, like they were firing. There was firearms involved or weapons involved, and then there was a dog involved. I don't remember the entire story, but he took them into custody, and he had them handcuffed in the back of his car, and one of them actually had a cuff key on him because, that was the kind of guy he was. Slipped the key and they were able to get a hold of one of his weapons, and they shot him and killed him right there on the side of the highway. These two brothers went on a spree through several towns for several hours. My friend Toby Bethel, he is with the Florence Police Department. He was in this little town just a few miles away from the location, and they shot him in his patrol vehicle and paralyzed him. He's still serving today, even from his wheelchair. He's a chaplain. He's a motivational speaker. But in that moment, and that happened, and then they just went on a rampage. And so we were trying to find them. We were trying to stop them, and they were on just a reign of terror. And back in that day, right, we were limited to phone calls, NLETS messaging. We didn't have shared radio channels or mutual aid channels back then. We weren't on DTRS. And so we were all of our centers were frantically communicating with one another, just trying to figure out where these two went, what were they doing. And my good friend was one of the troopers a little bit further west of their location. And this geographical area is between Canyon City and Salida. For anyone who's familiar with southeastern Colorado, this entails a long, very curved canyon. So when you drop into the canyon, you're just in continual hairpin turns, but there's no cell service. It was very bad radio reception. And these two would get ahead of law enforcement, and they would then set up in a curve. And as they would come around the curve, they'd open fire on them. And this was going on through the entire night. And I will never forget. I'll never forget that night, right? It all lives in my brain, because hearing my friend talking to us about how he's receiving fire was horrifying, because we knew him, right? We cared about him, and he was out there in, BFE without a lot of people around him, trying to chase these two down. And I remember a few times looking down at my feet and seeing the trash can there, and thinking to myself, if I throw up right now, will I make that trash can? That's my memory of that moment. But they were at large for 24 hours, and 17 officers over that period of time, 17 officers were injured during that event. They were finally captured the next afternoon. A wildlife officer, Percy, he was up in a tree, like he was, I don't know, like maybe he was deer hunting. He was just up in the tree, and they came through the river bottom at a town about an hour away from the original location, and he captured them. So they were taken into custody alive. But in the wake of that moment, teamwork again was instrumental, because there were two of us. One was on primary radio. I was next to the primary radio, and I was doing all of the logistics with the communication centers and updating and helping with the kind of triangulating where they were. And my poor trainee was sitting there just, in what you talked about, right? You're like, are we going to keep this person, or are we going to lose her tonight?
Yeah.
She stayed, and her and I are still in contact with each other. But, teamwork was that was such a big deal about that. But we never debriefed. There was no debriefing after this event. And for me, it's the moment I remember in everything I do now as a leader, to make sure that my team has access, like unadulterated, unobstructed access to psychological care, wellness care, resources. We offer our team free access to a psychologist whenever they need it. We don't need to know about it. We get a bill at the end of the month. just for the number of hours that they provide. And our people leverage it. I wish I would have had that. I know 20 years later, Toby, the officer I told you about who was paralyzed, he finally received a Valor Award for that night. And so there was a large ceremony last fall honoring his sacrifice that night and what he did. But for the rest of us who were involved, it was kind of that bittersweet, emotional, finally a sense of some kind of closure over what happened. And it's so important that we never forget every member of the team who works those moments, those events, whether it's, it's hard when it involves an officer, but really at any time, right? There are so many things that we get exposed to that we need to process, that we need to know that what we did mattered. We need to know that we were a part of something greater and that we're not isolated in our experience with it. And, for me, that's become just really that guiding moment for me in wanting to affect change moving into the future.
Wow. Damn, Tina. You have had a career. Like, there has been a lot of stuff that has happened. And thank you for sharing this story, especially because I know for sure there will be others out there who are listening to this who maybe they feel like they're alone, that maybe they feel as though they're the only ones who are going through something like this. If they don't have, peer support in there or debriefing or anything, because a lot has changed and a lot more centers do have peer support teams. They involve dispatch and debriefings, but there are some out there that still don't. And for those that still don't, or again, just in general, those who feel like they might be alone in this, they'll hear your story and realize that they're not alone, that they're not the only ones. And so it's been amazing to have you on here and to share your story and learn more about you. Now, as we go into the wrap up of this episode, I have one last question. It's a two-parter. And so I want to know how this job has changed you, and if you could go back in time with the knowledge that you have now to talk to yourself in the beginning of your career, what would you tell yourself?
Woo! Talk about save the heavy for the last. How has it changed me? Well, I think that this job has made me more self-aware in that I think that it's very easy when you get into this career to become cynical, to become skeptical of people or suspicious of people. And I went down that road. I went down that road where I would assume the worst, or, you're skeptical. I became skeptical. And I think coming full circle in my journey was about finding my way back to myself and finding my way back to my humanity and remembering that the majority of people in this world are inherently good and intend good. And just because we deal with the few people who don't embrace that, and maybe we deal with them repeatedly, or we deal with people who really take it to the next level, right? Like the individuals in my story. That is not reflective of the world. And so I understand my role is to help us stay connected to the good that is there, because it is. And we can help. We can help them when they need our help. But that was definitely, that's been my journey, like on the inside throughout these years, right? And raising kids and being in this career, and then like being suspicious of everyone when you're trying to raise your kids, like,
right.
There's a lot of growth that I had to go through. What would I tell myself in the beginning? I would say your resilience, like Tina, your resilience is key. You are not defined by the organization you work for. You are defined by what is in your heart and in your mind and the intent and the gifts that you bring to the world. And just do your best every day. It's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay to ask for help. You're not alone. I would just encourage, but I would never change the course of my career. Like, I feel like there was a lot of highs and lows in my career, but every single one of them brought me to this place I am today. And I'm so proud to be where I am right now with the team I serve with. So had any one thing changed, I wouldn't be here. And so no regrets. I'm zero, right? Just, I look back and I realize that I not only made a difference in the community, but I've had the opportunity to make a difference in people I care about, that I serve beside, that I mentor, that I look up to. I mean, it goes in every direction, but you're just a part of that larger family and community. And nothing can really compare to that outside of the love of your family.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much for being on. This was a lot of fun, and just learning about you and hearing these stories and everything, and just your insight on this profession. It's been awesome. So thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Thanks, Ricardo. I bet it's so excited to be here, and I really am. I'm going to hold you to it. I hope that we can sing karaoke in the car.
Oh, snaps. Yes. Yes, definitely. We're going to have to figure that out. I will be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us. And that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by Digital Rapid Deploy, as well as Carbine. And as always, shout out to patrons. Thank you so very much for everything. Perks for patrons only are audio versions of the DRT, as well as Open Mic Live, and then a bunch of other bonus content. If you want to be a patron and help support us, you can check us out here on patreon.com/WTT podcast. Also, this episode can be seen on Facebook, as well as Twitter and YouTube. And then you can listen to Within the Trenches podcast 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.